Can you believe it? I've just been talking to myself for 5 minutes. And I've had to admit I'm wearing my holy jumper today. So, having just talked to myself about candidate control for the last 5 minutes, let me start again. I'll probably be briefer this time. So I can't believe I didn't have to tell you that. I've just sort of suitably embarrassed myself. Right. So we're talking about candidate risk management today. Now, recruiters love the word control. They're sort of assessed by it. Line manager, like, are you in control? Are you in control of the client? You need to pick up the phone to the candidate, get control of the candidate. The problem with control is that it infers that we're making people do things, and there's nothing that we can do to make someone take a job. We can encourage them to go to an interview. We could probably encourage them to say they're going to start, but the reality is that we can't make people do anything, because they could always decide they don't want to turn up or just go and get another job. And so instead of using the word control today, and the term I use a lot more today in today's world is about candidate side risk. What do I mean by candidate side? Well, it's a term that sort of comes from corporate finance, where you have seller side risk. So that's the risks associated with the sellers. So that could be the strength of the CEO, it could be the owner, it could be the leadership team. And you have buyer side risk. So buyer side risk is about the availability of funding, their ability to actually follow through on the deal, et cetera, et cetera. So what I've done is, when I talk about vacancy management and pipeline management, I talk about candidate side risk and client side risk. And because when we think about control, it's not really about addressing things. And sometimes as recruiters, we trick ourselves that we've covered everything that needs to be covered. When a candidate says they can do the commute, check. It's okay, boss. I told them they could do the commute. When a candidate says they're happy with the salary, check. They said they were okay with the salary. But the reality is that until the candidate's accepted the job and they're sitting at the seat, there is always risks that we've got to manage. And so today, what we're going to look at is one little part of managing candidate risk. And the first bit that we're going to look at is really, how well do you understand your candidate? And so what we're going to do is start thinking about, when we talk to a candidate, hi, how you doing? Tell me what you're looking for. How much do you want to earn? Where will you going to do it? Great, you're up for it. Brilliant. Yes, I've got a candidate. It's about, how do we spend time actually engaging with that candidate, connecting with the candidate, and really learning what the candidate wants, so we can understand and predict where the issues are going to be through the placement process. I worked with a client about 2 years ago who did a fantastic job at this. And they were a contract recruiter. And whenever they did a placement, they had to fill in a placement sheet, but they had something on their placement sheet I'd never seen before. And what they had is, the recruiter had to write down 3 reasons why this deal was going to fall out early. Now, you might think, well, surely you should be excited about making a deal. Why are we thinking about it falling out? Well, the premise of the leader in that business was that the likelihood of a candidate getting a perfect job in the perfect location for the perfect length, for the perfect amount of money and location, was really slim. There was always going to be a compromise on someone's part, either client or candidate. And so what the CEO was getting everyone to do is to think up front, why is this going to fail, and what are we going to do to stop that? It sort of aligns with agile recruitment methodology and sort of some other software and project management techniques. But enough of that today. So what we're going to focus on today is really about, how well do we know our candidate? So let me just share my screen. And what I'm going to do is share this screen to sort of, there we are. Right. Okay. So I'm screen sharing now. Okay. So you can only see me in a little corner, which is good. So the concept I want you to think about today is this, is that when candidates are looking for a job, they have things in their current role that are push and pulling them away from where they are. They have things about their next role and the other opportunities available to them that are going to push and pull them. What I mean by push and pull factors is a push factor is something that's making me want to leave. It's something that's disconnecting me from where I am at the moment. And a pull factor is something that's taking me to where I want to be. So for instance, the fact that I'm going to cook my wife a lovely dinner tonight is hopefully going to be a pull factor for her to be loving the fact that she's married to me. The fact that I forgot to take the recycling out this morning is a push factor in terms of her happiness with her marriage. Now, and the nature of all relationships is that you want a lot more pull factors than push factors. And the challenge is when we work with recruiters, sorry, when we work with candidates, we often focus on pull factors. Why don't you like we focus on a few push and pull factors. So for leaving, we look at reasons for leaving. So we focus on push factors in their current job, and we then focus on pull factors for their current opportunity. What we don't do is focus on pull factors that keep them in their current job. So let me give you an example. Tell me what you don't like about your role at the moment. Push factor from their current role. Then we go into tell me what you want from your next job. Pull factor. But what we often ignore when we only focus on push in the current role and pull from the new role is we miss the fact that actually within a lot of candidate situations, they have things that are pulling them to keep them in their current employer. How often have you had a candidate that says, I'm really frustrated with how much I'm being paid, but I love my manager? Or the other option sometimes is, I love the company, I love what I'm doing, I love what I'm being paid, I just work for someone I don't like. And the challenge is as a recruiter, we focus on the reason for moving rather than the reason for staying. And so we need to start thinking more about every candidate through the process. Do we know why they're going to stay? Because it's actually easier to get another job to be better than when someone doesn't like. So for instance, extending the wife analogy, it's probably not that difficult for my wife to find a husband that could remember to put the recycling out. But she's unlikely to get someone that's as good a cook as me. And as a result of that, she sort of keeps me around for a few more days. But I'm always sort of on performance management, but that's another story. But the reality is that if you were looking to help my wife find a new husband, and I'm not suggesting you do, is that you'd have to be more concerned with what she already likes about me to show me why I'm better, because that's the higher barrier to reach than actually getting someone that finds recycling. And a lot of the people listening today, I know, recruit for skill sets, especially in technology, where candidates, you're trying to pull that candidate away from where they are at the moment. And so it's not difficult to find something that they're unhappy about, but it's actually the things that they really like that you've got to overcome. So let's just spend a bit more time on this image here. So right, so where are we at here? So let's think about the different drivers. So firstly, people have got push and pull factors around their current role. What do they like and what do they dislike about their current job? We've then got role progression. So how do they feel about their current role, but in their future role, what do they consider role progression to be? Because often candidates say, I want job progression, but how do you actually define what role progression would be and wouldn't be through the placement process? Compensation, again, one that sounds very simple, but it's not about package, it's about the details of that compensation plan. Included in that compensation plan could be learning, could be development, could be flexible benefits, could be flexible working. There's all sorts of things that come into that. You've then got the company culture. What do they like and dislike about their company culture? The relationship with managers. Many of you will have heard the phrase. People leave managers, not companies. When all research is conducted about why people leave employers, managers come out at the top. Okay, a bad manager costs you people. And so what we do is once we start to be aware of these things, it enables us to start asking questions that are much better at engaging candidates. And so the context that I'm going to be talking about, the questions that are coming up in the second, are focused towards a phone conversation when you're recruiting a candidate. But it's not to say you can't use some of these questions when you're writing sourcing emails and you're trying to attract and tickle candidates from a connection request through to someone that is actually involved. So let's go through to the next slide. So let's think about some questions that you might ask. So how often do you ask, what do you like about your current job? Simple question, right? But actually, that is probably one of the most important questions that you need to ask, because by finding out what they like, you get a starting point for what you need to sell your job against. Recruiters are often way too quick to go, hi, how you doing? I've got a job. I think it's fantastic. I think you're going to love it. Right, let me tell you about it. True. And if you think about it, if anything in life, people just come along and go, I've got a great deal. I've got a great deal. You're not going to be excited about that. Where you're more likely to buy is if you engage in a true sort of sales process. The first step of the sales process is building a bit of rapport. Hi, how you doing? How's your day been? The next part of the sales process is going to be finding the need. Tell me how your day went. What is it you like about today? What's frustrated you about today? Only then, once we've got the needs, are we able to go, well, this tool here could help solve the problem that you've had today. This feature of this potential husband here could help you find a husband that takes the recycling out. And once you've presented the solution, you're in a position to say, would you like to find out more? Would you be interested in buying this product? So the first thing is like, what do you like about your current role? What frustrates you about your current opportunity? When you start talking about the next role, ask them for, well, what do they want to like about their next role? What aspects of your current job do you not want to do? This was a question that I used to ask loads when I was working a desk, and I used to love it because a lot of times we get caught into the fact that because someone can do it, they're going to be willing to do it. So when you look at someone's CV, that tells you everything they can do. But the real art of recruitment is whether someone's willing to do it, whether someone's willing to do what you need them to do. Especially if you work a contract or a temp desk, you know, understanding, oh, of course they can do year end. Of course they can do this sort of project management. Are they willing to do that type of work? Well, that's for the candidate to decide. So what we're starting to do here is really get an understanding of what they really like, what they don't like about their current role, and what they do and don't want from their next opportunity. Progression is another one. What I've got on here is I've only got one question, but there's loads of questions. So how do you feel about the level of progression in your current role? We make the assumption as recruiters that everyone wants to be a CEO and progress really quickly. The likelihood is you're going to find people that just actually quite like where they are. They don't really want any progression. They just want to do the job they do, get paid fairly for it, and work in a nice environment. But how are you assessing that through the interview process? So how do you feel about the level of progression in your role? Another way you might ask that is, well, how do you feel about the level of challenge in your role? If you're calling someone that's had a good career progression and they look like they're quite ambitious, so maybe they've moved every 2 years for a promotion, asking them about how challenged do you feel in your current role? I know a lot of exec recruiters use that as their primary sort of attraction question. When they're calling an executive that's been somewhere for 2 years. Because if you're an executive in an organization, the way it tends to work is you spend 6 months learning the job, 12 months improving it, and then for the next six, you're hopefully at business as usual and you're starting to get a little bit bored. So anywhere after sort of 2 years, that individual's probably worked through a lot of the challenges that came with that role. And if they're minded about challenges, then that's going to be the attraction point that you want. But sometimes just asking them what annoys them about the current level of progression. And then ask them for detail around what progression would look like. And again, progression comes down to skills, projects, systems, tools. how much detail do we actually have of what progression would be like? I remember I had a candidate of mine once who was a newly qualified ACA, and she said, I want something commercial. And I didn't ask any more clarification questions. And 6 months later, she got a job, and she got a job at a company locally for a job that I had. It was a financial accountant job. And I rang her and I was like, I would have called you, but I didn't think it was commercial enough. And she was like, oh, no, it's really good. I love balance sheet reconciliations and I love the analytics on financial accounts. And I'm like, oh, I'd applied my definition of progression and commercial to her, where the reality is she has a unique definition of progression. But I might also ask, what would you consider a step back in your career? Remember, this doesn't mean by writing it down that you have to deliver on it. The reason this is risk management is when you present an opportunity to the candidate, you're able to be much more granular in how you talk about the role. You're going to like this because it does this type of progression, but you're not going to like this because it's got this aspect of the job that you said you didn't want to do. The more you can remove the surprises when a candidate looks at the job specs, the more you can remove the surprises when a candidate meets the client, the greater the likelihood that nothing unexpected is going to happen and you're going to get a success out of the time that you put in with that client. So when we move on to compensation, now compensation could be a whole topic in itself. But just how do you feel about the level of compensation at the moment? What do you like about your level of compensation? Which aspect of your package do you feel you get most value from? You'd be amazed, like in recruiter land, we're all about bonus, 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 bonus. But you'd be amazed how many people aren't really attracted by bonus. They like the pension. You know, they like the fact that it's really secure. They like the fact that it's a guaranteed 2% pay rise every year. They like the fact that they get study support and they get time to go and study or professional development. But asking a candidate, how do you feel about your current level of compensation, is a great way of getting them to give you answers. Again, we assume candidates feel they're not being paid enough. But when we assume they're not being paid enough and we get them a couple of K pay rise and they turn the job down, then we've set that risk up for ourselves. So remember, this is a live session. I'm doing a lot of talking at the moment. We're a few slides in. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to say, and we can go from there. So again, one of the most powerful questions that I used to ask is, which part of your package would you not want to lose in your next role? You'd be amazed, honestly, amazed at the number of people that just will not cut the number of days holiday. It's unbelievable. And that's personally because I was like, I'll work more to get more money. But that's me, a recruiter, where actually for some people, flexibility could be the most important thing for them. Holidays could be the most important thing for them. We need to know about these issues before they get to the end stage. The way you've got to think about candidate risk management is earlier in the process. It's like glue. We've got glue on both hands. We put a candidate forward to a job. Early in the process, there's loads of flexibility because the glue's still flexible. But as the placement goes on, the glue begins to set. And if you get to the end of the placement process and there's a mismatch, say days holiday, or bonus or pension, the effort involved in trying to get those back together could break apart the whole deal. And so what we need to do is be aware of all the little things that are little to us, but could be significant in the candidate's decision-making process. Company culture. We spend a lot of time in our workplaces. For some people, it's more important than others. But what do they like about their workplace? What do they like about the team that they work in? What does it annoys them about the team? What does it annoy them about the company politics? What does it annoys them about the environment in the workplace? You know, and which aspects of this do they not want or do want in their next opportunity? Now, you might start to think, well, surely this is quite a long conversation. Oh, no. It's quite a long conversation. Yeah, it is a long conversation. And a really good candidate registration call might be 20 minutes to half an hour. Now, would you have this with every candidate you speak to? No, probably not. But if you're sending a candidate forward to a client, you need to invest the time in learning about them and the things that will or won't impact them taking a job if everything works out. Look at it, that if I put half an hour in now and I decide not to put that candidate forward, I've saved myself £10,000 worth of time when the deal doesn't come off. Because remember, I'm not sure what it's like in your business, but when you get to the end of what's really annoying? I think everyone's just spending their day laughing at me today. But if everyone spends, when you get a client, when you get a candidate that turns down a job, more often than not, clients will just want to go back to the beginning. They won't always go to the second place candidate. And what we've got to do is be better at making sure we understand this. Let's have another look. So around the manager, how does your current manager motivate you? That's what we want from our managers. We want to be motivated. We want to feel like that manager has got our backs. So what is it? Because if a candidate goes, I love my manager, they're fantastic. Well, we've got to prep the new manager to say, look, they love their current manager. This is why they love their current manager. They love their current manager because they give them stretch projects and they give them the independence to make decisions on their own. Make sure you talk about how you manage someone and how you can give them some independence. And once you start knowing these granular bits of information, you can prepare the client at a level of detail they never will have experienced before. And what happens is the client knows the game that they need to play, and because you know what the candidate needs to hear. There's still a lot of uncertainty in the interview process, but we're able to begin to take some of those bits of uncertainty away. So then we get to the last bit, which when I started in recruitment, no one really gave one about work-life balance. But in today's world, people care a bit more. They care about flexible working. They care about commute. They care about work-life balance. They care about the extra support that happens within the organization. And so we've got to learn what they do and don't want. When you think about location, don't always talk about times, talk about location. So for instance, if I'm in Bristol, based on where I live in North Bristol, I would probably rather go to Gloucester than I would Weston-super-Mare, even though Weston-super-Mare is closer. The reason being, for 6 weeks in the summer, the M5 is a car crash. I definitely wouldn't go to Bath, but it would probably only take me 50 minutes, but the drive would be horrific. And so talking to people about where they would and wouldn't go, but really digging into the detail. If you're in London, it's about zones. If you're in a city or a region, it's about specific locations, and asking them whether they've tried that. But we're engaging in work-life balance, and that's really what we're trying to do. So we're beginning to get to the end of the webinar now. The things we've got to think about is, how are you going to do this? And so the trick is to be a little more patient, to pick 5 people that you need to speak to today, maybe candidates that you're working with already, and think about how many of these questions could you ask? Because these questions, some of you will have heard before, but are you actually doing it? And so the challenge I'm going to give you is I'm going to ask you all, what are you going to do to put this into action? Remember, at the recruiting gym, we talk about ICE learning, the idea, the conversation, the execution. So I've given you some ideas now. But what conversations could you have? Some of you might be sitting in a room together with colleagues. So could you ask yourself, how could we apply this information? Or which of these areas of questioning would be most valuable to us at the moment? The exercise I'm going to give you is, I challenge you all this afternoon to pick 5 active candidates that you're working with at the moment that are either sending CVs or at interview stage. And I want you to go away and start trying to ask some of these questions. Because if you can start asking some of these questions, what you're going to be able to do is get a much better understanding of what that candidate will and won't want from the placement. And then you can go to the next side, which is client risk management, by making sure the client's aware of what the candidates want and don't want, and get them to mitigate through the process. So that sort of brings us to the end of this session. But what I would say is, thanks for joining us. We've got another one in 15 minutes, which is for managers on how to have motivational one-to-one review meetings. I look forward to seeing you there, and hopefully I'll see you soon in the gym. By the end of the day, the video will be in the gym and there'll be a live conversation for everyone that wants it. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care. Bye.